Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Lovely to see you all. My name is Mellissa Withers, and I am one of your moderators for today's session. Clearly, this is a really important and evolving topic, and we're delighted that you're joining us for part one of this webinar series. So let me just share a couple of slides with you so we all know what we're here doing. Okay. And I'll ask the co-moderators to continue to let people in. I see people in the waiting room. Welcome, everyone. So I would just like to spend a couple of minutes talking about APRU and why and the purpose of what we're doing here. So the Association of Pacific Rim Universities is a nonprofit network. APRU is a nonprofit network of more than 60 universities in the Asia Pacific. It represents more than 500,000 staff and more than 2 million students. The APRU Secretariat is located in Hong Kong, and I'm the director of the APRU Global Health Program. So the Global Health Program is one of several programs within the APRU network. It was launched in 2007, and this is why we're here. So here's the list of universities that belong to the APRU network. If you're interested, of course, we welcome people from other universities and also from industry, from government, etc., to participate in our programs. I would like to acknowledge that this webinar and many other of our training initiatives in ethics was in part coordinated by the Working Group on Bioethics, led by Leander Marquez, Marichuy Medina Arellano, and Alex Atrio Lopez. So thank you to all of you for your leadership. Actually, the reason why we decided to organize this webinar is it actually came out last year of a training that we do called the Mini Certificate in Health Research Ethics. And actually, our first speaker, Dr. Cordero Diaz, was giving a talk, and a student brought up the fact, wouldn't that be great to talk more about AI in health research? And so that prompted us to, yes, I think it would be interesting. And we have within our network some incredible expertise in many different disciplines and from many different economies who are going to speak to us over the 2 days of this webinar. So today's agenda, we're going to hear from 4 speakers, Dr. Mariana Cordero Diaz, Dr. Alex Phang, Dr. Dean Ho, and Dr. Oying Rimon. Each of them is going to speak for 12 to 13 minutes max, and then we'll have a couple of minutes for Q&A. So as you're listening to the speakers, and if you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat, and we'll have our speakers answer as many as we can. The Q&A will be moderated by Leander Marquez, one of the co-chairs of the working group. So it is my pleasure then to welcome our first speaker, who is going to give us kind of an overview or an introduction to this topic. Dr. Mariana Cordero Diaz is an MD with a Diploma of Humanities and Ethics. She serves as a bioethics docent and the Wellbeing and Professionalism course coordinator for medical residents and fellows at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in Mexico. Her activities and research focus on ethics in research, professionalism, the learning environment, and the well-being of medical students, residents, and physicians. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides right now so that we can welcome Dr. Cordero Diaz for our first speaker.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening, and good night, wherever you are. It's an honor to be here. And it's really true that the first time we thought about this webinar was because a medical student was talking about this in our ethics seminar. So it's very important to learn to use these tools, right? Myself, I have been immersed in them this last couple of weeks and since a little more than 1 year, but mainly because we need to get familiar with this kind of tools. It's important that we try to use them in a practical way so we can face the challenges and also the very great tools that they can be if we use our ethical principles as healthcare professionals and researchers in a responsible way, right? Because as you can see, I used some of the AI generative technology available at the time, and it depends a lot of which one do you use to get the full references. But then this is also has our everyday practice, an example that we have to not, only stay with this kind of method, but we are responsible also for having all that happens in this kind of environment. We have to check that, right? Because our ethical dilemmas that we can face with these tools are very, very similar to the ones that we can face in any other kind of our practices. As healthcare physicians and healthcare professionals, researchers, we have to follow our ethical codes, but also to be aware of the huge responsibility that we have being trusted by society with the knowledge and the science, and that we have to verify all this information. It seems like these are really magical tools, right? That they can do something that will take for us like hours, and maybe for them, you can see this in this video, it takes only a couple of minutes. However, even if I can see here the references, it is my professional responsibility to go and verify these sources, right? And to think about that this knowledge has been generated first by humans, by scientists, but then this technology is retrieving it from the web. So what I'm trying to say is, of course, these are tools like the X-ray machine, like medical devices and other technology, even a word processor that we will have to use because it is a door, that we already have opened, and we need to think about what are the implications of doing this. So I'd like to start with this video because I wasn't able to speak about this, about the ethics of something that I haven't used a little bit more than I had before this webinar. So I think that we have an opportunity to try and share our reflections, our experiences, but also to focus on the social and scientific and professional responsibilities that we have as scientists and health professionals in not only developing and using these tools, but also in teaching them to our students, right? It's very important that we try to use all these technology and generate all kinds of tools, right? I look up, and some of my colleagues share with me, for example, this tool in which you can do study guides, briefing documents, and even you can do, well, it can do this AI tool can generate even a podcast which would include very colloquial expressions and idioms. So it is amazing. Yes, it is. We have to talk about then what are the challenges, right? Because we need to understand that we have an opportunity to not take control, but being part of the use of this technology in our realms, right? And this is a new opportunity for this new century that we have going in 25 years, a lot of development in this area. So I would like to share some thoughts about what are the implication of the artificial intelligence in health research. It's very important to understand that we have a lot of responsibility, right? Hans Jonas, the philosopher, has emphasized since the 20th century the responsibility that we have to reflect about the technology and the scientific advance, about the impact it will have not only for knowledge itself and science, but for human beings, and also to think about and be responsible about the consequences, for possible consequences and impacts. Actually, he advises like a prudential, a very prudent way to take decisions, which way to go. And well, I think that it is important that we assume that principle of responsibility, not only as a professional group, but also for our governments and regulator bodies, right? It's very important to have a governance, an ethical governance that can also guide us about how to use and apply these technologies. It's very important that we understand that we are already using AI in healthcare systems and that we are having some generally very good results about this use, right? There's some studies published recently talking about even that the patient satisfaction has been higher with when the uh, hospital system use the message with the patients with AI technology because they feel more empathetic messages generated from the AI. Of course, the patient didn't know that it was generated by AI. It was then disclosed to them, but it is really, really interesting to think if really is that empathy, if it is generated by a technology. I think this brings us back to the fact that nowadays, everything that the AI tools generate have an human source, right? They take knowledge from us. But it's also very important to understand that this doesn't take our responsibility away. We have to be very aware of the development and deployment of AI in healthcare. Raises significant human rights consideration, not only related to data privacy and informed consent that they do, but also the responsibility to protect particularly vulnerable population. And has been widely described, the bias that the AI may have, given that we have studies and knowledge that has been already biased, right? So it's very important to understand that nowadays we have a lot of funding, right? About the data science, this science that encompasses techniques for analyzing complex data. And then it's very important to understand that our organizations has the one that we are right now, have this kind of access to funds, and they can generate guidelines and can generate an environment to promote this development. It's also important to understand that we have to familiarize ourselves with the different guidelines that come from general, international, association, or institutions. For example, the UN Committee for Science, they have a whole page dedicated to artificial intelligence, and not only to the recommendation and the ethics of artificial intelligence, but also on practical guidelines to address these concerns. So it's very important to think about the application of generative artificial intelligence within our context of healthcare and healthcare research. It is very important to understand the basic concepts related to these technologies. It's not that easy for some of us, but well, these are concepts that we have to study and to understand to know how is this information generate. It's very important that we think about applications that can change the context and the reality of patients and in our countries, right? It's very important to look for fundings, but also to follow the recommendations about how to apply these technologies. I would like to end sharing some points that I think are very interesting about ethical aspects of AI in health research. More importantly, all the information that I went through focus a lot about the ethical principles that we should apply to the use of AI, right? It's very important: autonomy, informed consent, data privacy, transparency, justice, and the very important role of scientific integrity, because it is our responsibility to be aware that this is one of the highest responsibilities that we will have in the next decade to not only comply with the governance and the guidelines, but also to responsibly span all the future directions that we will apply to AI in not only health research, but also in medical education. So I will share this link to this presentation, and I found these online courses that I invite everyone to join, because I think we have a responsibility not only to think about the future, but to understand that this can be a new tool that will have challenges, that has some risk, but we can go on and try to apply this for the common good, and try to learn about it, and try to not lose the focus that this has to be aimed for human well-being and growth. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction to this topic and to the importance of what we'll be talking about over the next today and the next week's session. So feel free to type questions into the chat. We have a couple minutes. Maybe we could stop sharing your slides so that we could see you. Let's see. Let me ask the first question. How do the members of an IRB or an REC keep up with all of the evolving technologies and evolving ways that AI is used in health research?
Yes, I'm glad you asked, because myself, I'm a member of these committees, right? So I think, and maybe a lot of us are or will be part of these committees. And even as researchers, it's very important to be aware of what does it requires, right? I think it's very important that it is part of the capacitation, of the training that you receive. It's very important to think that we cannot judge something that we do not know. Because if we don't know how this works, then, or even in the academic world, how do you cite if in your protocol, the use of artificial intelligence, or even if the research itself is about applying some AI to whatever you are researching, then you have to have that knowledge. And I think that this requires a great support from our institutions, the healthcare academic centers, and that have to have not only guides, but available courses for training and to see practical applications, right? Because we cannot wait for those to come to us. We have to know them in advance so we can evaluate if you are using the AI as you are supposed to do that.
Thank you. And another question is regarding an IRB application. Does a research proposal or an IRB application with detectable AI sources, is that something that's going to be automatically rejected?
That's a great question, actually. Let me share two things. First, I just was reading a report about how the use of AI technology could help ethics research committees or IRBs to optimize their work in reviewing protocols. So we are in the, looking for applications even for that work to review the protocols and then to have more time to discuss, for example, for discussion, because we can have a first assessment by the AI, for example. But that will require that we check that, right? We will not generate that, the letter of acceptance or rejection based on that only. On the other hand, of course, we can use these tools. It's the same discussion that I think we have to go deeper with our students, residents, and colleagues. It is not that we are not able to use these tools, but we have to follow the ethical and professional principles of scientific integrity. That's because we have to be very careful of how we cite the use, we reference the use of these tools. And if you have a doubt, you can, also search for how to cite, how to reference, how to do the citations. But also, and it's very important, we have to review also the requirements for the funding or publication of those research. Because, for example, some journals have published or actualized their policy about that. For example, all the authors have to be human beings, that AI cannot be the author of the manuscript. And we all know that we have available online already AI software that can write the whole paper for you. So it's related to scientific integrity. So don't do with the AI what you wouldn't do with doing it by yourself, right? You have to cite. If you take one phrase from one source and you do not cite it or write the reference, well, you know that you are not complying with the rules of scientific integrity. So anyway, we have to explore this, we have to work on that, and we have to discuss that. And that also reveals the need for guidelines, policy, and training.
Yes, thank you. And that I love all the questions, everyone. This is great. That relates to someone's question is there a living document and for IRBs for guidance? It seems like there's not. We only have a few more seconds, but quick question, last question for you. Should the use of AI in health research programs be mentioned, and do you need to ask for permission from the subjects of the investigation, like in consent forms, etc.? Should we mention?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. We have to mention all the tools. I insist. Those are the same principles of ethical principles applied to research with human subjects, right? Informed consent process that we have to reveal what tools or methods we are going to use in a way that the subject understand, right? Because we have to use that language. So this is a very wide field of the research. I will only share with you from this the experience of these couple of weeks that you can go in to the web, to the different institutions, organizations. Even APRU has one, a guideline, and UNESCO that I share. And there's a lot of information that we can be reviewing and then trying to bring it to our own institution, right? Because we have to discuss this, and we have to discuss this very, very fast, because students and residents are already using all these tools and more, and we are being left behind. So let's do it, and let's do it fast, because it is here and it is going to stay with us.
Absolutely. Okay, on that note, thank you very much. Wonderful introduction. And I wish we had another hour just to hear each speaker, but we're going to move on in the interest of time. Thank you. So let me introduce our second speaker for this evening. Alex Phang Kean Chang is a senior lecturer, assistant professor in the Department of Pathology in the Faculty of Medicine, Universiti Malaya in Malaysia, and the head of the Unit of Medical Research Ethics there. He holds 3 master's degrees in pathology, public health, and health research ethics, along with a PhD in pathology. As a faculty member for the Master of Health Research Ethics program or more, which I love that you have a program just in that. It's a collaboration between Universiti Malaya and the Berman Institute of Bioethics at Johns Hopkins University. He's also a senior research fellow with the Global Health Bioethics Network, where his current work focuses on ethical and governance challenges in precision medicine. He also is interested in the ethics of emerging technologies. So thank you so much for being here. And let me see here. There is a way that I am supposed to let you share these slides. And
yeah, thank you so much, Mellissa. I think I'm sharing the slides. Can you see that?
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to share from your side? I'm fine. Go for it.
Okay.
Either way,
If
yeah.
I can get this to work, because I've never done this before. I don't, let's see. Option, I don't, yeah, maybe you should just go ahead, because I can't figure it out right now. We'll come back to
problem.
that.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, maybe a little bit louder, someone says.
Okay, all right. All right,
Okay,
thank you so
thanks.
much, Mellissa, for the introduction. So good morning from Malaysia and good evening to our friends from the other part of the world. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I would like to thank Mellissa for inviting me to be part of this meaningful APRU webinar. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about the ethics at the intersection of this predictive AI and precision medicine, where we think that researchers have the moral obligations to balance their innovation at the same time when they develop these technologies, and also their responsibilities in this regard. So, okay, so our research team, as Mellissa mentioned just now, in this Global Health Bioethics Network, we are currently working on the project focusing on the implementation of precision medicine. Particularly, we are looking into the RMIC settings. So what we are doing is that we trying to get to know what is the current landscape and what might be the governance and also the ethical challenges surrounding this area. So we actually developed this infographic also to make it easier for people to comprehend what is about this healthcare innovation. So, yeah, for those, because I know our audience today from a very diverse background, people maybe from clinical background, maybe social scientists and all that. So it would be great that maybe I will give you just a very brief introduction what is about precision medicine. So essentially, precision medicine uses this more precise approach. For example, analyzing our genetic profiles, and then also combine with the information such as the environmental factors and also our lifestyle habit, which might be associated with the disease that develop from the patient. And from there, the clinicians will be able to tailor the treatment strategies in a more precise manner, which we call it as a targeted therapy. All right, so let's begin with the opportunity. So traditionally, if you look at the left side, the lab scientists will run the patient sample using conventional methods such as PCR and even the more latest technology. We use the NGS to do all this genetic profiling. And I think most of the labs are still doing the manual analysis to uncover the what we call that, the genetic abnormalities related to the disease, for example, cancers. So, however, the vast database that obtained from each test run actually is very laborious, I would say, and because and definitely it take up a lot of resources, and it require like the skilled staff who actually can do the bioinformatic analysis, for example. And this also may cause a lot of I mean, if let's say they are not skilled and experienced enough, and that might actually cause the human errors. So nowadays, I think a lot of our colleagues that working in this area, the researchers who are actually developing the predictive AI to enhance the process. And I believe many would actually agree with me that the predictive AI is a game changer, yeah, for precision medicine in three key ways. So as I listed here, um, so first of all, I think it can actually improve the diagnostics. Okay, so as we know, AI can help us to detect diseases, different kind of cancer, like for example, by analyzing the genomic data, and even at the very early stage. So because we know when we do all this genomic testing, so that will actually enable the clinicians to know and to detect the disease earlier. And also, I think AI also has been used to, to read the histopathology images with quite high relatively accuracy, I would say. And also when talking about treatment wise, I think by tailoring the therapies to the individual's genetic, by tailoring the therapies to the individual genetic profile, we actually able to avoid one size fits all approach. And for example, I think AI can help us to predict which patient will respond to EGFR get therapy for colon cancer patient based on the KRAS mutation, one of the genetic mutations lah. Okay, and besides that, I think for preventative medicine also early risk prediction also allows early intervention that can actually help a lot to reduce the long-term healthcare cost of yeah. However, I think when all these things come in to the picture, we always say like greater power always come with greater responsibility, right? So from what we can see, this AI predictive model from precision medicine seems to be able to offer huge benefits, but there might be also some ethical concerns that I think people may need to aware of and also to think about. And because this technology, as mentioned by our speaker earlier, we should move faster, and we really need to catch up before this has been really deployed and also implemented. And before we deep dive those concerns, probably we can look into this case study first. So now I want you to consider this about this case study. So a hospital in this Southeast Asia region adopted an AI model developed in the West to diagnose colon cancer. So this AI system able to analyze genomic data, like for example, KRAS, the one that I mentioned just now, and also BRAF mutations in colon cancer, and also able to analyze the histopathological images to recommend treatments. But there was a few concerns raised by the local scientific community, which is the model which is that the model was actually developed and trained on the data from predominantly Caucasian populations, and it had not really been validated on Southeast Asian patients, and will this actually cause any problem when it comes to the diagnosis and also the treatment. All right, so in view of the limited time given for this presentation, so maybe I will just bring you through the issues and also problem arise from this case study. All right, so here, yeah, firstly, maybe we can talk about the genetic variation. So as mentioned just now, geographically, we know in different population in different region, it may different expression and also different patterns of the variation. So if we look at the literature, we know that KRAS mutations occurs in almost 40% among the Western colon cancer cases, but only about 20 to 25% in among the Asian populations. So as mentioned just now, the AI which has been trained on this Western data may eventually overemphasize KRAS or the BRAF mutations, which may further lead to these inappropriate recommendations for this target therapy, which I mentioned earlier, the EGFR inhibitors. And this targeted therapy is actually an effective therapy for patients without KRAS mutations. All right. So the subsequent concern is about the these genetic or the molecular testing gaps. So the AI system that developed in the West may also miss out some locally prevalent biomarkers, like the high rates of microsatellite instability, MSI, which is quite prevalent among the Southeast Asian patients. And this part has not been well explored because it is not prevalent among the West, where the AI model was built and developed. So this has eventually, last but not least, leads to the more serious consequence lah. Yeah, so the AI model are not able to give accurate diagnosis lah, and because it eventually misclassify the disease, and because it has not been fed and trained using the local data, most likely it wouldn't able to generate accurate results, and the patients may get the ineffective treatment eventually. All right, and also there will, as I mentioned just now, what I can summarize is that there were two significant implications from this case study. So the patients who received the false negative or inappropriate diagnosis may eventually get the wrong therapies lah. So for example, those with the KRAS mutations were wrongly prescribed EGFR inhibitors, and this may lead to the treatment failure, and also this may also cause the trust erosion where the clinicians may lost confidence in the AI system after repeated mismatch between the prediction and also the outcomes. And also, I think for the patient wise, also they may start feel skeptical of this AI driven treatments. All right. So
Just
from
1 minute left, sorry.
yeah, okay. So yeah, maybe I can just mention about a few key ethical concerns here. So yeah, as I mentioned just now, the AI model or the algorithm which is trained on the representative data, so its prediction will be quite biased, and imagine this AI model trained on the West genome, so it may actually miss the critical biomarkers in Asian populations. And also the patient also must be fully informed on how their genetic data utilized. And also, we also need to think about carefully how to set up the frameworks, especially when all these potential harms come along with this AI model. And when talking about the privacy and also data security, also I think it's very highly personal when talk about genetic data, and also in terms of confidentiality breaches and all that, that will subject the patients to discriminations. And of course, when we have all this technology available, so we need to think about what might be the accessibility, the access, and also the equitable fairly distribution of the potential benefits among all these populations. All right, so this is my last slides. So a few key takeaways before we end. As we mentioned, before we implement all these technologies, is need to framework in terms of the accountability, and this will definitely can be achieved with the concerted efforts of these collaborative efforts together. Not only the developers, clinicians, but I think the government, the policymakers play very important roles into this. Yeah, with that, I would like to end my presentation here today by saying that this technology is important, and it offers promises, but however, I think the ethical challenges demand very urgent attention. So yeah, thank you for your time, and I welcome your questions and thoughts. Feel free to email me if you have any further questions. Thank you, Mellissa.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alex, for that very interesting presentation. So we have several questions here from our participants, and a lot of them want to know that how can we be sure that AI will not be able to use patient informations in ways that we do not want it to? The context is that because precision medicine uses a lot of personal information.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? Because I think my line is not very stable just now. Yeah.
Yeah, so according to our participants, precision medicine uses a lot of personal information. So how
Yeah.
can we be sure that AI will not use these information in ways that we do not want it to? How can we be sure, for example, that it will not be abused, the information gathered from the patients?
So what I currently I mean from my experience when we develop this AI algorithm, so we already set what the information that should be will be actually taken into consideration when the AI model run the analysis. So then I think the AI will actually pick up those important components that to be analyzed. But however, I think when we talk about the black box things, right? So we still do not know like how this data been analyzed and eventually come with the decision and all that. So therefore I think when we develop all these AI algorithms and the training module itself, I think the developers really need to engage closely with the scientists, with the clinicians who work on this data. And also in terms of the how to actually effectively avoid the AI abuse the data. So I think it's still quite very unclear, like what might be the mechanism is. But I think a lot of researchers is working towards that to be very definite on the AI model on what kind of the data that could be used and what kind of data shouldn't be used in the analysis itself. So I think that's a very good questions that we need to think about when we develop all these AI tools to help us to do the diagnosis.
Thank you. And I think we have time for just one more question. A related question is that since AI also mines data and it of course for it to learn it uses a lot of information. How can we be certain about the risk factors? How can we who is accountable, for example, if there are certain results that lead to harm?
You talk about the accountability, right?
Yes, accountability.
Yeah, I think this is actually the again, I think this is a big question that who should be responsible if this AI cause error or potential harms to the patients, whether it is the responsibility of the developers, clinicians. So for now, we might not have a very good answer for it, but definitely I think we need to further discuss based on the local context and to determine a clear frameworks to ensure the smooth implementation of this technology. So yeah, so I think this is a quite important part. I think we need to engage the relevant key stakeholders to think about this accountability framework on who should responsible for what. Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Alex. Back to you, Mellissa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leander.
Okay, thank you so much. Fantastic. So I'm going to remove Spotlight and we're going to continue. So I would like to introduce our third speaker of this evening, Dr. Dean Ho. Dr. Dean Ho is Provost Chair Professor, Head in the Department of Biomedical Engineering, the Director of the N.1 Institute for Health, and Director of the Institute for Digital Medicine. He works in the Department of Pharmacology, Young Lu Lin School of Medicine at National University of Singapore, managing a portfolio of over 10 prospective interventional human clinical trials. His team has also developed and validated Curate.ai, a powerful artificial intelligence platform that personalizes human treatment for a broad spectrum of indications ranging from oncology to digital therapeutics, infectious diseases, and more. He is an elected fellow of the U.S. National Academy of Inventors, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering, and the Royal Society for Chemistry. He is also co-chair of the WHO Working Group for the Regulation of AI for Health. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mellissa. Can you see my slides okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here today. I'm going to share just a little bit about what we do at our institute, and then I'm going to culminate this presentation sharing data on my own personal journey of using digital platforms to optimize my own health as part of a first-in-kind human trial. So quick disclosures, founder, shareholder of a startup, advisor to a few other companies. As mentioned, I'm subgroup lead at WHO and co-chair now, and then we receive funding from various sources. I'm going to kick things off by just giving a very brief intro to our Institute for Digital Medicine. And we've had some great talks this morning talking about ethics, talking about implementation, talking about data usage and security. And I think something that's unique about Wisdom, or the Institute for Digital Medicine, is that we take a non-chronological view for how we develop digital platforms for therapeutics. Our institute certainly has an amazing team on the left of engineers, of clinicians, et cetera. But on the right side at the bottom, we have a separate arm that deals with behavioral sciences, implementation sciences, health economics, all the way to reimbursement. And in fact, one of our senior leaders in the Institute, Yohan Sapadel, actually hails from insurance, and he was the first person we hired into the Institute because our mandate is to change the practice of healthcare with small data. We actually don't do big data. And we use data in a way where we use only a person's own data to manage only their own care dynamically. And to do this, we have to rethink how we collect data. We have to rethink who pays for the technology, all the way to acceptability of our approaches by doing user engagement studies with clinicians, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, allied health, caregivers, and the patients themselves. And in doing so, we work with social scientists, business school professors who handle operations, all the way to industrial designers to look at the UX and UI of our platform. So it's quite a unique group, and we run a lot of clinical trials based upon what we do. So when we think about this concept of personalizing and medicine and looking at precision medicine, I think it's really important to take a deeper look at how we define that. We know that we are different from each other, and that's kind of the hallmark of both precision and personalized medicine. But the critical thing is we also evolve over time, right? And so based upon that, there's a key question, and it's that, why is treatment often based on a snapshot? Right, when we look at the data used for AI, it's often a lot of population data, but that data is a snapshot of a lot of people. But if we are evolving over time as we are treated, the treatment should evolve alongside the patient. And so we believe that the way we collect data matters, right? We want to understand how patients evolve dynamically over time as a function of how patients respond, for example, to different doses of a drug. So I'm going to kick things right off with an example of a prospective use case for Curate AI. Okay, so this is not a retrospective study. This is not a big data crunch. It's not theoretical. This is a patient that we've actually treated among many patients that we've treated. This patient was brought to us a while back with a rare blood cancer. And our study plan was to dynamically adjust doses because, again, treatment should evolve alongside patients. The best dose for a patient on a Monday could be very different for that same patient a few days later, a week later, a month later. And so by using Curate, where we dynamically adjust dosing, we ended up helping this patient achieve stable disease while eliminating the need for blood transfusions with this rare blood cancer. The patient originally was intended to be on trial for about 12 months. And this slide's actually a little bit outdated. We're at about 39 months now for this patient and still going, right? And we managed to publish this case report. And what we're so happy about is that it's the patient himself who requested to remain on trial, which means our workflows are adaptable and align well with high quality of life for our patients. And again, for this, we use data for treatment, right? And so the previous talk, really outstanding work on diagnostics and pathology. Our team's entire work scope is in interventional uses of data. For those who haven't been to Singapore, we live in a super aging society. And there's this really amazing initiative being developed by our Housing and Development Board, by a number of stakeholders led by Professor John Wong in our health system called the Health District, where we are seeking to understand, first of all, how to enhance health span, okay? In places like Singapore, Korea, et cetera, people are living to unprecedented lifespans, 80 plus years old and growing. The challenge is health span does not align quite yet, right? Health span meaning the years spent in high quality of health. And so we've got about a 10 or 11 year disparity between lifespan and health span. So the last 10 or 11 years are spent in generally poor health. So we become interested in how to lengthen that health span. And knowing what we know about data, small data, how people change over time, about a year and a half ago, we initiated a study called the Delta trial, where I am my own test subject. Okay, and to do this, we had to obviously get IRB approval. And because this was a first-in-kind study, where the first study we believe at the National University of Singapore, where the professor is the test subject, we actually had to go to the Ministry of Health for approval as well. And as part of this study, I've started longitudinally collecting various data points of my metabolism via blood, my microbiome, all the way to my sleep and my cardiovascular health. But a differentiator here is that this is not merely a longitudinal data monitoring study. I'm also varying the intensity of inputs to see how these markers change, because typically in healthcare and in medicine, we kind of give everybody a fixed input, right? A drug at a fixed dose, and if we're lucky, we measure their response over time. Okay, I'll repeat that. We typically give people a fixed dose, and we measure response over time. But in my case, I'm varying my dosage, for example, and then I'm monitoring how that changes my markers, because that's a whole galaxy of data that we often miss, right? And so when I talk about varying dosage, what do I mean? Okay, so as part of the study, and I will add that this is IRB cleared, it took me a few years to get kind of used to this regimen, so I don't recommend trying this right away. But I have a very unique daily regimen that I practice. Okay, so I fast about 20 hours a day. Okay, and there's a reason I do that, because when I do that, I've learned over the past several years that various markers, my blood glucose, my blood ketones, and other markers achieve a very dynamic state from which I can really monitor how changes to my inputs, my fasting duration, my exercise intensity can modulate these biomarkers. I work out every day for at least 90 minutes, and I have a fairly fixed dietary regimen, which I'm happy to stick to. And this allows me a cleaner data set from which I can do some interesting work. The first thing I'm going to show you is my metabolism. Okay, so this is my metabolic switch process collected by blood. And if you look at the blue plot, that is the dynamic change in my blood ketone levels as a function of exercise and fasting. Okay, and if you look at that, the black line that's kind of jumps a little bit at 8 a.m., that is my blood glucose. But I'm fasted. And so my blood glucose jumps when I exercise because of glycogen depletion. And that's coupled with an inverse relationship with my ketones. And I can see that without eating until about, dinner time, I actually have a jump in my ketones. And so I can understand these daily dynamics. I have even sharper data down to a few minutes of how further my ketones change. And I actually did this for 31 straight days in a paper that I'm going to talk about to really understand how my body shifts over time. My microbiome. I've started studying microbiome dynamics as a function of 48-hour fasts, as a function of 24-hour fasts, as a function of no fasting. And something that I have found is that when I do these 24, 48-hour fasts, these do change the composition of my gut microbiome in a way that appears to be beneficial by reducing certain levels of microbes that we don't want a lot of, and also eliminating microbes we really don't want, okay? And that's that yellow box in the middle, which is fusobacteria, which is pathogenic. It's associated with disease that we see in our population in the region, but I appear to not have any or very low levels of. And so this is a reflection of 2 microbiome tests. I'm moving on to another several that I'll report next time. I know I've just got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to wrap up a little bit here with things like sleep, right? I think when we look at our young adults and adolescents, and of course, every other age group, we could all improve our sleep. And I also look at sleep dynamics as a function of various dietary behavior, et cetera. And as a person who's never been a huge fan of sleep, it's shocking to me how sticking with certain routines can really improve my outcomes. Cardio, I do a lot of dynamic cardiometabolic monitoring, and for a person in their mid-40s, I never imagined that undertaking this kind of metabolic switch optimization, I've been able to achieve some pretty fascinating cardiometabolic outcomes, which are quite interesting. And so to conclude all of this, there's a question of why. Okay, why am I collecting this kind of dynamically modulated input to understand this new type of data set? And so we're understanding now the role of generative AI in analyzing this data for better analytics, digital twin construction, even gamification, and improving adherence to these behavior change dynamics that we look at. If you look at this image on the right here, this image is a generative AI developed image based upon some of my data. Okay, and interestingly, this is my data that looks at my dynamics as a function of exercise. Gen AI is now potentially able to differentiate between when I'm active and when I'm inactive, because when I produce images of my inactive data, they're actually quite boring, right? Not very action-packed, and Gen AI is able to deduce that I am indeed active and differentiate from when I'm not. People ask me all the time if I'm fasting, 20 hours a day, am I sluggish, etc. Well, my performance metrics imply otherwise. I'm in very high percentile performance for people in my age group, and apparently in 20-year-olds as well. And now my lipid panels are at a level where we now have clinicians who are coming to us to see how they can develop some more simplified profiles for their patients. I'm going to end on this one, which is, I ended up publishing a first paper on my results. I do disclose in this paper that I am the test subject. I actually sent this paper to my health insurance asking for a discount. Still waiting back. I'll probably be waiting indefinitely, but we'll see what happens there. And then finally, I wanted to thank Mellissa and team again for having me. Please feel free to stay in contact. I do share kind of recent findings from my data, and always happy to correspond with everybody. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Dean. Many of us are amazed by your presentation. So there are several questions here. What is the long-term goal of this? What does it mean for the community? What do you think are the implications?
That's a great question. So, in Southeast Asia, metabolic disease is a central issue that's confronting anywhere from one third to half the population at least. And as we know, patients with diabetes often don't know that they are pre-diabetic or diabetic. I'll be very upfront. Our goal is not to get people to fast 20 hours a day. Okay, that's not the goal. The goal is once I kind of have this fairly fixed regimen, my next paper is going to share kind of N of one insights into what, at the very minimum, I found was easier, what I found to be challenging, and what I found to be very challenging in terms of implementation. There are certain population relevant findings that I think can be shared in terms of things like food economics, a need to understand how certain dietary products may need to be subsidized for broader access to the population. At the end of the day, what we are seeking to do with the data is to help health systems understand that if you collect a little bit more data from each person and their dynamics, some of these time constants alone may serve as better biomarkers than what conventional medicine uses. But to do that, someone's got to pay for it, typically going to be the healthcare system. And so that's something that we are exploring because we have that expertise in our institute.
Thank you. There are there's a couple of questions here regarding ethics. Who monitors the accuracy of the input of data, and how do you reduce potential bias?
Great question. Bias is the more challenging one because I am the test subject. I kind of know that I'm the sole patient. There's no control arm. It's single arm, single patient. But the data is actually directly transmitted from my devices to the people who are actually the study team members who are running this. And amount of data that I do have on myself is split across multiple devices, by the way. I've got 3 devices, and so we look at kind of device to device congruency. And then I have an independent clinic doing some of my biomarker monitoring. One thing of note is being a first-in-kind prospective interventional digital health study. The IRB does watch this one closely. People ask me all the time, they say, hey, look, I want to be a part of your study. But you know, and our stance right now is once I finish my study, which is in about a month or 2, once the IRB does some data and safety management assessment, we will start to think about opening this up to more subjects.
Great. I think that's all the time that we have for the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for
the
having me.
presentation. Thank you. Mellissa?
Thanks so much. It's super interesting. Thanks for being here. Okay, so last but certainly not least, I would like to introduce you all to our 4th speaker, Dr. Jose Oying Rimon, who is the former director of the William H. Gates Sr. Institute for Population and Reproductive Health at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, where I got my master's, by the way, and former principal investigator of the Challenge Initiative. Dr. Rimon is a senior scientist emeritus in the Department of Population and Family Health. He was also the founding director of the school's Center for Public Health Advocacy. He chairs the International Steering Committee and the core organizing group of the biennial International Conference on Family Planning. He's an internationally recognized leader in population, reproductive health, and family planning with more than 30 years of leadership experience, and has managed and evaluated and designed over 300 projects across multiple public health issues in Asia, Africa, and the Near East. By the way, we have the full bios of all of our speakers on our website if you're interested, but I would like to welcome Dr. Rimon to as our speaker. So thank you so much for being here. And let's move on.
First, thank you very much, Mellissa, for organizing this very important forum in behalf of APRU and the Global Health section of APRU. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon across different time zones to the 300 participants of this webinar. So I picked this topic, AI research in corporate setting, because this is where most of the action actually happens. So it's on the topic of ethical governance and product development research, marketing research, and data privacy, and taking a look at what's happening in the corporate sector. Next slide, please. So this is the definition of artificial intelligence that I like the most. It's the definition coming from OECD. So it says here, machine-based system that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, make predictions, recommendations, and decisions influencing real and virtual environments. AI systems are designed at varying levels of autonomy. That second sentence is equally important. But what I like in this particular definition of OECD is the phrase for a given set of human-defined objectives. In other words, it's not surrendering major decision-making purely to the machine, but the human input is very important, and the objectives are defined by human beings. Next slide, please. So a review of AI research and ethics conducted and published on the Frontiers in Artificial Intelligence as of 2023. And as you know, many things have also been published after this particular comprehensive review. The conclusion of the authors of this comprehensive review is that research ethics boards, or IRBs, are not equipped enough to adequately evaluate research ethics and recognize standard guidelines to help them do so. That's the major conclusion. We're not there yet, on what the guidelines are and the practices with regards to review of AI research. Next slide. Another group, and probably Dean is familiar with this, was convened by World Health Organization, and they published the results, of that meeting and consultation in the BMC Medical Ethics 25 article published in 2024. So this is WHO. The expert group convened by WHO identified 4 areas of concerns. One is appropriateness of building AI. That's a very important first question. How appropriate it is and what circumstances. 2, transferability of AI systems. So I think you probably listened to Alex about the use of a Western AI system as applied to an Asian setting that did not quite work well. So the issue there is where are the issues with regard to transferability of AI systems? Who are accountable for decision making and outcomes? Sometimes this is an area that's amorphous with artificial intelligence and the issues around individual consent. So these are the 4 top areas of concerns that WHO expert group has identified. Now, if IRBs or REBs are inadequate to deal with the ethics issues in the universities, how much more inadequate would it be in corporate settings? That to me was a central question to my mind. If we don't have it adequate in academic settings, what about the corporate settings where AI is happening at a tremendous speed? How do we deal with that? Next slide. So we have upsides of AI research and applications. And I've cited here a few. There are many. So AI research can help deliver more efficient healthcare services. That's very easy to understand. It can improve performance of healthcare professionals. That's also self-explanatory. It helps with rapid diagnosis through use of medical imaging, X-rays, MRI, CT scans, increased accuracy through precision medicine as both an opportunity and responsibilities surrounded around that issue, as Alex has previously mentioned. Next slide. But there are also downsides to this, and the algorithms used. AI is highly dependent on algorithms, okay? Downsides of algorithms can lead to bias for branded medicines versus generics. Can be used to deny coverage of patients with pre-existing conditions. And this is a big issue with regards to health insurance coverage. I think you probably may have read the famous Mangione case associated with the assassination of the CEO of United Healthcare. I'm not sure if this is true, but the media was saying that it may have been related to denial of health insurance coverage because of pre-existing condition. It can lead to racial or ethnic profiling. It can lead to gender bias recruiting, as has been proven with regard to Amazon, and Amazon admits that. Can lead to spurious correlations and patterns of behavior. You think that artificial intelligence is always right in terms of predicting patterns of behavior, but sometimes it may not be right. I personally, I have experienced this when I saw my insurance for my house go up tremendously, and I didn't know what happened. I didn't apply for any roof or window reimbursement. It just went up. And it turns out that it was related to one incident in which I have a small accident. Somebody bumped me in the rear. It was not even my fault, but the algorithms used by the insurance company correlated that to increasing my real estate housing coverage. So actually, the Attorney General of the state of Maryland several years ago, actually filed a case against this insurance group and actually won the case because it was very spurious patterns and correlations that they were using in order to increase prices. It could lead to collecting data for academic purposes and having that data used for profit making. So there are downsides to this. There are also upsides to artificial intelligence use and research. Next slide. So let me just use one company to look at the downsides of this. And this is the Facebook Meta company. I think you probably have read that famous Cambridge Analytica scandal during the 2016 elections in the US that was used by Cambridge Analytica using Facebook data, unauthorized by Facebook, did no full disclosure of the risk to users that got somebody elected or helped somebody elected president of the United States, And that there was a case, a class action lawsuit that was filed around that because, among others, the artificial intelligence used on the data included profiling to manipulate emotion and target psychological vulnerabilities, essentially mental health, especially when you feel insecure or worthless. They would make certain political appeals to you. Okay, so this was settled for $725 million action lawsuit in 2022, with Facebook not admitting to anything done wrong. They just paid $725 million, which they can well afford. In 2019, Facebook agreed to pay the Federal Trade Commission in the US $5 billion related to its probe and privacy practices. We actually really don't know what the $5 billion in the violations are. They just paid for it. But when you search what was the basis for that, you can't find it. Okay. Facebook also settled for $515 million for facial recognition lawsuit again, that was filed in Illinois for using an algorithm for face matching software to identify people in pictures and tag them in violation of the Illinois biometric privacy statute. Next slide. Continuing on this one particular company, a whistleblower from inside the company, you probably know her, she became famous, Frances Hogan, in a testimony in the US Senate, has made these two important conclusions. One is the algorithm that's being used by this company amplified misinformation and always maximizes profit growth, rather than implement safeguards in its platforms. And she also, in her testimony, said that the algorithm harms children sows division, and undermines democracy to pursue astronomical profits. Okay, there are several others, but I'm just pointing out several some prominent cases with regards to this particular company. Okay, so given this potential, you call it abuses or challenges around use of AI in corporate settings, whether you're researching on product development or doing market research or dealing with issues of data security and privacy, what steps can be taken to address these ethical issues? Okay, so one, the REBs, research ethics boards, and the IRBs, in some universities called IRBs, especially in the US, use legislation to craft content and procedures and guidelines. It is now time for countries to begin, in the Pacific Rim, legislating to set the parameters and the ethics of using AI research for both research and product development and applications, especially in corporate settings. I think many of us are very familiar when we take the quote unquote the exam to be certified, for research. We know that the guidelines and the practices are heavily influenced by legislation. We know that. Okay. So in this context, legislation can help, but it's a very difficult area of what do we legislate here. Okay. Strong data protection and privacy is certainly part of the answer, but it's only part of that. Okay. Industry-driven approaches in the US, for example, the National AI Initiative Act, developing frameworks for safety and privacy, might help, but there is a built-in conflict of interest in some of these industry-driven approaches. How do we deal with that? So a major conclusion by many of the people involved in this research ethics is for enforcing Europe's data protection regulation is very important because it has international rates that would mitigate mining and profiling of participants. The WHO Bioethics Group should continue to investigate progress around their set of recommendations, the 4 sets of recommendations, and I think we can follow the progress on that because that would help us craft guidelines and practices with regards to RIBs. Countries in the Pacific Rim to set up an active sharing mechanism of best practices, especially not only among universities, but also as AI research is practiced among corporates. And I think Mellissa could probably take the lead on that, for the APRU. Last slide. So in conclusion, 3 points here. Artificial intelligence excels in processing and pattern recognition, but lacks consciousness and emotional intelligence. I think this is the observation of the top AI scientists themselves, and this was in a special magazine issue of Artificial Intelligence, the second wave, page 96. Okay. AI is advancing faster than any technology in human history. So if it's advancing faster than any technology in the human history, our response to this would always be inadequate. So now the question is, how can we catch up with such a technology that is advancing fastest in human history? So AI, at the end of the day, can be a force for good. As I mentioned, at least there are 6 items there that it can help, but can also be the end of privacy as we know it. Essentially, the only conclusion I can make on this is the future is in our hands. What we do now can help shape what the future is going to be with regards to AI as used in health research. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting take on this to remember that a lot of our research is being funded by corporations, right? And we're knowingly or unknowingly often participating in these. So we have some questions. So how can researchers remain ethical in AI use in situations where corporations are funding their research?
I think disclosure is important and key to this. There are corporations who are believed to be have much better governance around use of AI. If you read the literature, IBM has been mentioned as one. So I actually took a look at the health ethics governance within IBM. At least on paper, it looks like as stringent as what we see in the universities. I think LinkedIn has also that reputation, but I haven't looked at how LinkedIn conducts its governance around artificial intelligence and health research.
Thank you. And I think last question, in a general perspective and with the current information we have, do the benefits of AI technology use exceed its potential damage and risks, in your opinion?
Wow, that's a tough question. Having just read the special issue on artificial intelligence, the second wave, and having read all the different programs, algorithms that are being used right now and are being developed right now, they really promise huge potential in terms of improving the human condition. In other words, the opportunities are incredible. Just looking at what is available right now and what is being tested. If you have the opportunity to read that magazine, it's an amazing magazine telling you exactly what are these new programs, these new algorithms, and in what area can they be used and can improve the human condition. But that's the promise, you know. The issue is at what cost? If you believe that privacy and data security cannot be compromised, then many of these promising new technologies are actually compromising privacy and data security, the way I interpret what I have read. So on balance, for me personally, is that the promise, as long as there is an equal attempt to look at the ethics and the responsibility, I would err in that direction. That's my own personal view of this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rimon, for being here. And I think that was a great way to end this part one. I know we're out of time. I wish we had more time. You had some fantastic questions, everyone. I just want to remind you that part two is next week. So we'll be hearing from 4 more speakers on different topics relating to AI and the ethics in health research. So it's same place, same time in 1 week. I would just like to give my heartfelt thanks to all 4 of our speakers for this evening for these really provocative and thoughtful and interesting talks. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise with our network. And thank you to everyone for being here. I will look forward to seeing you back here in 1 week. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kwanta.
Thank you, Dr. Mellissa.
Thank you. See you next time, Anita.
Bye.